Dating, relationships, marriage, all of these things are making men miserable in 2026. And it really has a lot to do with the fact that these things went from being a normal, attainable part of life to where they're at today, where I basically call them a humiliation ritual. That's what they have become. And it's at really all three stages as well, which I'm going to talk about. It's during the courtship or dating phase, then it's during the actual like relationship phase, and if you want to put a ring on it and you want to make it official, so to speak, there's a humiliation ritual there as well. So let's just start with the dating phase. This is probably the biggest one of them all, and the one that makes men more miserable than probably any of the other stages. And let's get first things first, right? One of the biggest reasons that dating in 2026, especially for men, feels like a humiliation ritual is simply because of the quality of women. The quality of women has gone down an insane amount in the last, let's say, even 2 decades, but especially 5 decades or a century. What's changed since then is that in the modern day and age, most women hold men in some level of contempt, and even if they don't outwardly hate men, they still believe things like historical narratives, and they believe that men are a certain way, and already have sort of a negative perception towards men. And as a man, where you're going for a girl, it's just something that really gets in the way. And it's like, why would I kind of want to be in a relationship with someone who hates kind of like my guts and like the fact that I'm a man? And it's weird because obviously they seem to have contempt for men, but they still date men and go for men, and to an extent that's just the default setting. But again, it just really makes a relationship hard to be in, especially as a man, when it's just like, why am I in a relationship with a girl who doesn't really seem to like me, or men in general, very much? That general dislike of men and the influence of modern day, third and fourth wave feminism and cultural influence and stuff, it's gonna mess up your relationship too, because it's no longer okay just being a innocent girl or whatever. Like, everything has to almost be a competition. She has to be a girl boss, and she has to be strong, independent, whatever, all the BS. And again, it just makes a relationship so really annoying to be in as a man. It's like, I'm not looking for an adversary or a competitor here. I'm just looking for like companionship. And probably one of the biggest elephants in the room is, how much the average girl today has, quote unquote, been around the block. In this day and age, forget finding a girl who hasn't been touched at all. I mean, at this point, it's almost like you almost have to be grateful if this girl is even just single digits. Like, the sort of state of promiscuity among young women today is at unprecedented, insane levels. And I mean, if this switch was to happen night and day within like a day, like 50 years ago, like I think our like grandfathers and whatever would have like rioted, like, what the hell. But again, in this modern day and age, because dating has become such a humiliation ritual and we've had such social and moral decay, it's like, this is just normal and allowed. And I mean, a lot of men take part in it too. So again, it just shows kind of like the overall degradation of society. The thing that makes this even more of a humiliation ritual is that despite the vastly degrading quality of the average woman to date for the average man, their demands are actually higher than they were 50 or 100 years ago, when the women were actually way more innocent and just, pleasant to be around. Every year, it seems like the standards of the average girl are going higher and higher. Every year, I see these stupid like street interviews, and girls are expecting more and more money. They're expecting guy to be taller and taller somehow. They're expecting, guys to be fitter and fitter. And again, all of this is happening while they themselves, on average, are getting worse and worse. So it's really just a crazy inversion, and I think a lot of this is to be blamed on social media, both for inflating their own value, but also making them think and making them delusional in thinking that they can just get any guy in the world, and that every single guy they see on social media is akin to the average guy. Now, let's say that you find a girl who's, normal enough, especially for 2026 standards. She hasn't been completely, used like the town bicycle. Maybe you're her second or third or fourth guy, and maybe she has some kind of like weird like feminist kind of beliefs, but she's not like a crazy like radical one or something. Something basically you can live with, because again, you have to sort of, in 2026, lower your standards a little bit. There's still so much bullshit that comes in the relationship phase and afterwards that, again, you can't really avoid, and it's just a humiliation ritual. Relationships in the modern day and age have lost all sort of semblance of there being any kind of mutual duty between a man and a woman, and really it's only happening on one side. I'm saying it like a mutual thing, but really it's in the modern day and age that women's duties towards men have completely gone by the wayside. Nowadays, in the modern day and age, women expect to do basically nothing in a relationship. They don't see that they have any duty, and the society as a whole doesn't push that a woman in a relationship has any duty towards the man. But that being said, the man still has all these different duties towards women, whether it's protecting them, whether it's just taking care of them in an overall perspective. A lot of that has to do with financial stuff. Like, all of those things for men are still intact, or maybe even getting, in a weird way, a little bit stronger. But any semblance of a woman having some duty towards her boyfriend or husband or whatever has just been thrown out of the window. So it's just this weird, again, humiliation ritual where, as a man, you have to basically be a woman's slave and jump through hoops for her. And if you're to expect anything in return, you're kind of seen as the bad guy, and you're seen as like some freaking 1950s patriarch or whatever. So again, it really just begs the question, in this kind of scenario, why would a man really ever want to have a woman in his life? This is the kind of stuff that makes men miserable in relationships and dating. Why do I want a woman in my life who's not gonna help me in any kind of way, yet I'm expected to, help her and carry her load in a bunch of different ways? Again, it's just really being taken advantage of. Now again, let's say this woman that you chose is normal enough, she's not crazy, but because the Overton window on relationships has kind of shifted, you're still not getting the level of commitment and duty and treatment from your girlfriend like your grandfather was probably getting 70 years ago or whatever, right? But again, let's just say whatever. You're going to take what you can get in 2026, and now you're going to put a ring on it. Well, the thing is, once you make it official, the humiliation ritual is probably going to get even worse. The proposal and the wedding are both humiliation rituals in their own way, which I'll make a separate video about, but let's just talk about what happens after you get married. If you're getting married in the modern day and age, the state, the government is involved in your marriage. And because they're involved, and because of the way they have changed the laws within the last 50 years, you've actually ended up signing a contract where your wife benefits from breaking it. So naturally, her behavior usually is going to get worse, and there's nothing you can really do about it, because again, she's not going to face any consequences for being a bad wife. And I mean, forget consequences, she's actually going to benefit from it. So after they've gotten a ring, the average wife's behavior actually gets worse, because now they've locked you down. They have you within the grasp of their palm, and they know that you can't really escape. And if you are going to try and escape, well, they're gonna make out like a bandit anyway. So they just really, all of these prior things that I talked about, the little annoyances, they can really just ramp those up, because now they have nothing to lose and everything to gain. So if you thought the relationship was already kind of lopsided in the sense where, you were doing more for her and she wasn't doing as much for you, well, again, that's only going to get worse. She may have seemed reasonable and not really seemed like she had anti-men beliefs or really hated men, but, all of that could have just been an act. And now she might expose herself for who she truly was, while she couldn't before because she had to lock you down. Maybe she even lied about how much she's been around the block, and you find out now through whatever means. Maybe she even admits it. Again, she can do all of these things because she has no consequences. Any day, she can decide to cheat and leave you. She can just decide that she got bored and doesn't want to be with you anymore, and she can leave. And even if she never leaves, the thing is, she knows that you can't leave. So what that means is that she really just needs to do the bare minimum. And in many cases, that bare minimum can be quite literally nothing, because in many cases, men will just, stick it out, and they'll be getting nothing from the relationship, no love, no help in their daily life at all. If anything, they're taking on basically the burden of two people, but they'll still stay with it because, sometimes it's harder to leave than it is to just stay. The saying, it's cheaper to keep her, exists for a reason. So that pretty much wraps up the video. Whether it's just in the courtship phase, whether it's a relationship, or whether you've made it official and married a girl, it just seems like dating and relationships are a humiliation ritual in the modern day and age. And what's crazy is it's probably only going to get worse. So if it's this bad in 2026, by 2036, who knows how terrible it'll be. It's demoralizing. Again, I don't have a solution. Maybe you got to find your unicorn. You got to find a girl who doesn't think like the average girl of today and doesn't have the issues of the average girl. I think I found mine, but at the end of the day, we're all kind of at their mercy, so we'll see how it goes. Anyways, thanks for watching. Bye.